Alright guys, Kremp again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Today was a massively important game for OpTic Texas. A loss to the Royal Ravens have put them in serious risk of not making the winners bracket at their home major in Dallas in just a couple of weeks' time. And it wasn't just a loss, it was an absolute collapse yet again. OpTic have now lost 12 maps in a row, starting with the Ravens back at Major 1 in Madrid, finishing with the Ravens as of today. What's going on at the moment? Because OpTic last year at Major 4 were bad, but they'd won the event just before that and they won the event after. This year they were the #1 seed at Major 1, but crashed down at Major 1 very early in Madrid, and since then it's been an absolute disaster. The confidence seems to be shot, the teamwork seems to be shot. Is there any saving this team? Because it's not just Kenny that performed poorly today. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Wow, do we have a lot to get into today, because we started with Miami versus FaZe. This was an interesting series, I thought, on paper. Maybe Miami could put up a bit of a fight. Game 1 though was relatively comfortable in the end for FaZe. However, there was some drama during this series that we'll get to here in the coming minutes, so take a little bit of this with a bit of a pinch of salt anyway. Now look, the reality is FaZe were on fire, and Miami didn't play badly in some level. Like, they put up a bit of a fight on many of the maps. They won the game 2, for example, making a pretty substantial comeback in the end, but FaZe were slaying hard. This game 1 was interesting just because on the red card nowadays, you will tend to see lots of ARs be utilised, and for understandable reasons. Bigger map, bigger guns, how it tends to be. But Simp was running the flex here. Okay, not really the flex, but you know what I'm saying, but he was on an AR, he was flexing to an AR, and that proved very effective, as should really be no surprise. But it is interesting that you can see sometimes on these maps 8 ARs in play, and yet Big AR in the GA chat doesn't seem to complain, but sometimes on a map like Vault, you might see plenty of subs. All of a sudden then it seems to be an issue. But yeah, Miami went down 1-4 on the Vault. They brought it back to around 11 and they went on to win it. Metals had 3 kills going into the final round, but he got this important one, and he got this one as well onto Simp. Went for the plant, but Cellium was making the flank in a 1 versus 3, gets the first kill, but eventually traded out here by ReeaL. That's a 1-1 game there. But the control, that was FaZe's, and then FaZe took the hard point as well. So FaZe won the series, expected, but Miami, they're pretty solid, certainly online. It's difficult to say exactly how they're going to perform. I think naturally they're going to be a bit of an inconsistent team, but on this game, their style, that super fast-paced, aggressive style, does and can work. We certainly saw it at the major. This was a bit of an out-of-pocket tweet. Probably have to move on for this kind of quickly, because otherwise the video is going to get demonetized. But this was the real drama. So ReeaL mentioned the following: this league is an effing joke. GG's FaZe lost 3-1. Now let me just hit the refresh to see if this tweet is still live. For now it is. So, you know, this brings me back to the good old days of MW19 when Octane Sam was tweeting all kinds of stuff about the state of the league, and all of it was fair enough. But back then it was kind of known that you would catch fines for these type of things. Nowadays I don't really know if they care that much anymore, but yeah, the players calling out the league was not really considered to be a thing that you should do. In my opinion, perfectly fine. If the league's made a mistake, it should be called out, and that's what ReeaL does. Now the details of this are as follows. So let me just actually hit the refresh, so maybe Twitter will allow me to actually translate this, but okay, if it doesn't want to, we'll have to right click translate, and you guys can't see what it says on screen, but the translation is: I complained at the beginning of the first map, down 30 to 50 score, that the game is running at 50 frames per second, and what I hear over the microphone is keep playing, keep playing. So yeah, I guess that makes a fair bit of sense. The point is that Miami, he says, were playing that series on like a 50 FPS situation, as in the game was cooked for some reason, and on their end the PCs were having issues, and he was playing on 50 frames, and the referee said, you got to keep on playing, right? This, I guess, to some degree is the issue playing from home, but also the referees watching things unfold on some of the cameras. I mean, look, 50 FPS is not 10 FPS, but it is substantially lower than what they would want to play on, you know, well into the mid 100s plus, especially if they're playing on, you know, 144Hz monitors, 240Hz monitors. They want to be at that kind of number in terms of FPS as well. For whatever reason, this game was far lower than that, and yet the referee, you know, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because if you're the referee, you're hearing him say, oh, I've got a problem here. And, you know, what do? You're down 20 or so points. If you're a referee in that position, do you, you know, take the player's word for it, as it were, and say, right, we're going to pause this game, go for a replay? Or did the referee want to go and have his lunch break, right? And was like, oh, come on, lads, keep going. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, this is, you know, from an integrity perspective, this is a big problem, right? Because okay, it's not like his game crashed and they didn't get a replay or some, dramatic circumstance like that. It's more nuanced than that. It's a significant frame rate delta, but it is still relevant, right? And from a playing side, you can really feel these type of frame rate things. If you guys have ever played, Counter-Strike or just any game really, and have experienced a frame rate loss, I just used to get it often in CS, so I'm mentioning that as an example. But you really feel it. Okay, when it goes down to 10 FPS, that's even worse. But 50 FPS is certainly bad enough down from like 170 to be considered relevant. Now, I don't really know how this was continuing in other maps, but it definitely does raise questions as to the state of things over there with the league. Would it have really mattered that much anyway? Maybe not. And FaZe eventually take the victory. And like, I imagine that these numbers and the FPS and some of the drama we're talking about was a component in some of these numbers. But still, as I said before, from a pure slaying perspective, FaZe are untouchable at the moment, pretty much apart from maybe Thieves. Like, look at the numbers. Simp with a 1.6, Cell with a 1.45, Drazah with 1.2. Like, they've not won these respawn maps by a massive margin, but they've outslayed by so much that it simply doesn't matter. Like, if you outslay by this much, there's just no way you can lose. Even if you're not playing the perfect, efficient, fundamental Call of Duty. It just doesn't matter when you outslay by like 100 kills, which is basically what they did this series. However, the next series was the one that really turns the attention today. And as I said this morning, this in many ways is a must win. We talked about it on the pre-show as well today. And my opinion was, after last weekend's, I wanted OpTic to really treat that Rocket series like the big wake-up call, right? They had to come into this entire last week of practice with immense focus and commitment and dedication and realization that they are nowhere near where they need to be. These problems aren't just going to magically fix themselves. And I just worry, having watched this series today, that they're going to treat like this as the wake-up call, whereas it really should have happened last weekend where they went 0-6 map counts and weren't even close to doing anything. Today they played a Ravens team, fresh off a 3-0 win against Rocket yesterday, and I felt like Ravens in 5 was a fair call because I wasn't sure about OpTic's search and destroy, but for OpTic not to win a map again was nothing short of embarrassing. And the plays that OpTic made, I mean, this is what you sometimes see from OpTic. When they're going through a slump, you sometimes get this. When OpTic just go one by one, they don't trade anything. And we saw that today, but it just felt like the cohesion and everything was completely non-existent. There was barely any moments where I was like, oh wow, that was nice work from OpTic, right? Like, it's just 4 individuals. It's 4 individuals on the map right now that seem to have absolutely no confidence or really any idea what they need to do to get better. That's the concern, because I know that Ravens aren't bad at this map. They kind of like a protocol hardpoint, but Ravens are not a good at hardpoint. Like, you can't be losing in this way. Ronnie made the point that they've got no teamwork. Completely agree with that assessment. And it kind of only registered in my mind when this came up on the broadcast that this was OpTic's 10th map loss in a row, because at the major, they won map 1 against Ravens and then lost 3 straight. Obviously, they lost FaZe to 3-0, they lost to Rocket 3-0, and then they start with a loss here. So this is against a Ravens team, by the way, that OpTic have clowned so hard this season, right? Shotzzy's been very vocal about it, about the performance of this team, the fact that they're not playing for the win and stuff in practice and all this. And it's like, okay, if that's true, how about you win? But all 3 times we have seen TJHaLy play OpTic this season, it's gone his way now. And all 3 times we've seen Slasher play Shotzzy. Slasher was like 0-14 or something, or 0-13 all time against Shotzzy. And he's won the first 3 this season. Like, it's just a remarkable set of circumstances. And the search and destroy, I mean, wow. I couldn't believe what I was watching at times. There was just no fight. There was no well-executed team play. Dashy was finding himself in constant 1 versus 3s. This was another example here. And I think what I found especially frustrating to watch in many ways was that OpTic's approach here to the search and destroy was just like nowhere near what you might have expected it to be. For example, like on most offensive rounds that Ravens play, it's Slasher, right? It's Slasher search and destroy. Like, you know what he's doing? Prid took the mick out of him the other day, calling him a capybara, right? And we'll see Slasher actually respond to that here in a second, because of the way that he approaches search. OpTic have clowned Ravens repeatedly this season in many regards. That was maybe another small example. And yet Slasher says, okay, we're going to spread the map, we're going to play for picks, and we're going to slowly work A bomb. What do they do this rounds? They do exactly that. Kenny just runs out of A for some reason and dies. I don't know what was going through his head. Like, it's not like Kenny played the worst on the team this series, which is really a problem to say when he had a 0.79 or whatever it was. But Dashy was literally worse in terms of pure KD. And I don't know what it is. Like, Dashy was not good at the major either with Hook. And since Pred's come back, he's been pretty woeful. Like, I think it's maybe a root canal thing and his practice. Like, clearly OpTic's practice hasn't been good, but genuinely OpTic might need to turn on the streams so they can actually be held accountable to what the hell they are doing in practice right now. Because I know that they know how to stream because they're obviously struggling and they need to improve things. But like, what are they doing in practice? Like, genuinely, what have they done the last week? Like, I don't know. Because how do they go from last weekend to this weekend? And what have they done? And what have they worked on? I just don't understand it. And it's not like what Ravens do on Red Card Search and Destroy should be a surprise. But Kenny gets picked somehow, they plant the bomb, they win the round, and it was quickly a 6-1 fashion. Obviously, everyone was talking about the fact that OpTic were just nowhere to be found. Again, I think what really crept in here was a confidence thing. Like, OpTic probably felt like after last weekend, okay, win map 1 against Ravens, we're back, you know, and they lost map 1 comfortably. And it's like, hang on a second, you know, we're in serious trouble. And yeah, Ravens gave them 1 round, then they lost the round 11. And even this round was bad, right? Because they got the bomb down. TJ just runs through middle of the map, or Gwinn runs through middle of the map, gets 2. And it's a 4v1 and Dashy's not in the player. It's just like, you know, I couldn't believe it. Kenny had an ace in 1 round that they won, but apart from that, there was just nothing happening. And then the game 3, I mean, I couldn't believe this game 3 when I was watching it live. I was watching it in Octane's chat as well, and he was, you know, kind of cracking up a little bit watching some of this gameplay, because all of the rounds, like, I put in the chat here, I know that Octane said on the watch party, it was like, oh, Rab's in my chat roasting OpTic, and I don't really think I roasted them, but I put in his chat, can they get in the points? Because this map, like this first rounds, OpTic had so many chances to hop in the A point and stop the time, and they didn't do it. And then Ravens did exactly the same. And basically they just traded not getting in the points. So I don't know what Ravens are doing either, but it's not like, oh, wow, defense is super strong on Hacienda now. Like, no, neither team got a point for the first, or a tick for the first 4 rounds. Like, it was ridiculous, to be honest. Ravens are playing it just as bad as OpTic, but it was solid defensive holds. But then it goes to a round 5, and is anyone surprised that in round 5, the offense, as always is the case for some reason in cards, manages to win the round? But after all this back and forth, OpTic managed to secure the defense, right? Ticks were tired, it went to their defense again, but TJ goes on like an 8 spree here towards the B point. They eventually get this one locked down. Shotzzy made a big play here with this slide to keep it alive, but again, the teamwork wasn't really there. And it looks like OpTic were going to win it. I mean, look at this point here. There's 1.4 seconds on the clock, and it looks like OpTic were going to do enough, but actually they don't get the guy out of the A point fast enough. Shotzzy and Pred both die at critical times, and that leaves a 7 versus 3. They do get the B zone. The time is secured, and that's game over. OpTic go down in a 3-0 fashion again. So, you know, Kenny was just laughing about this because he was like, I can't believe we collapsed like that. And it was a difficult way to lose, to say the very least. And TJ, understandably, loving life. They've played them 3 times now this season. They've won all 3 times. 1 at the minor, 1 at the major, and now during the qualifiers. Like, they've completed the 3-peat in many ways, and this time it was actually a 3-0 fashion. Even Slasher was getting involved, because, as I say, clearly you heard the comments. I'm not exactly, like, Prid wasn't, like, roasting him exactly, but he heard the comments about him being a capybara, and Slasher says, you know, play for picks, baby. Currently 2-2, got to keep getting better. But, like, this is absurd, right? Like, the map loss record in a row is, what, 13, 14, 15, something at ballpark? And sure, OpTic will have to get 3-0'd by Falcons to make that worse, but no, that was the first comment I put in OpTic's chat of the day, or in Octane's chat of the day about OpTic, was like, Falcons are going to be licking their lips right now. Falcons in the next game that OpTic play, and OpTic are looking as bad as I've ever really known them to look. And it was a point made on the broadcast as well. Look, they're the reigning world champions, this team of 4, but that was a different game, that was a different time, and right now they're clearly way off the pace. And this is what I was saying the other week, is like maybe a role change or bringing somebody else in from a coaching angle, I don't know. Like, they've got to try something, right? They've got to try something, because if they don't try anything, the spiral is going to continue, and I don't really see any spark that's going to be able to give them the confidence to get back to where they need to be. That's the problem for me that I see with OpTic, is that the confidence isn't there. And also, I don't exactly know what's going on here, but, like, Dashy, Like, are they all playing from the Hex quarters here? Or are, like, I don't know, is Dashy's maybe not there? I'm not exactly sure, because it kind of, are they in the same spot or not? I don't think they are, right? Because Dashy doesn't play on this side normally. So, yeah, just a few interesting things happening right now. And OpTic get 3-0'd again. Dashy had a 0.7, Prid had a 0.7, Kenny had a 0.7. Shotzzy was really the only one kind of shooting back here, at least in terms of what he wanted to do. And the point is it Kenny's fault? Look, Kenny's not playing well, and it was the same this series on average, but it's clearly not just a Kenny thing. The issue, I guess, for Kenny is that, as I've just said, as much as I don't think that Kenny is like, if you drop him, you're going to make massive strides, certainly in the long term, OpTic do have to do something, right? Like, I really don't think that just, oh, you know, let's keep working and we're going to work it out. I don't think that's a solution right now. I think it's gone beyond that. I think, you know, it is panic stations. It is the confidence seems to have gone. So something's got to give. Going into World Championship last year, they brought an Accuracy as their head coach, or like, not as their head coach, but, you know, he was maybe working with the team, maybe he wasn't. He was working with the team. He wasn't their head coach, but they brought him in, and he seemed to help them, and now he's working for a different team. Back in Vanguard, Kenny and Drazah swapped roles, and they brought in Shane. That seemed to help things. OpTic have to try something, and the risk for Kenny is that what they try is like, well, we've got to make some sort of change, because otherwise we're not going to be able to inspire any sort of revitalization. Intrigue to your thoughts in the comments below, but it's getting bad. And as I said right at the opening of the video, OpTic now 0-3. Their final 4 games of the qualifiers, they play Falcons in the minor, sure, but after that they play Miami, they play Toronto, they play Thieves, and they play Gentlemates. So let's just assume that Thieves is a loss, the way that they're currently playing these two respective teams. OpTic could get to 3-4. 3-4 may be good enough for winners, but there is a very realistic chance right now that OpTic are starting in losers bracket at their home major, where they are the defending champions of that venue, in an environment where they've lost 12 maps in a row. They're not far off the all-time losing streak in the CDL for map losses in a row. And this is meant to be your reigning world champion, potentially best team in the game this season. So, yeah, it's insanity, isn't it, really? But just OpTic things, I guess. And I know that OpTic fans will know what I mean by that with the roller coaster of a few years that they have had. Just before we close the video, we'll discuss Toronto versus the Boston Reach tomorrow. But Surge versus Gentlemates. Surge took the win here. I was watching Octane's reaction to this. It was a painful series to watch in some respects. I don't really know some of the time what these guys are doing. The real shout out, though, we have to give, though, is to Neptune, because he has come into this team and dropped some just serious pace on the server. Like, he is faster, he is more impactful than even I expected him to be, which is saying something, because I thought that he would be fast and impactful. But he has come in and he's just roaming around the map, killing absolutely everything. This game seems to be built for him entirely. The impact that he's had has been almost immeasurable, actually. They go up 2-0. Gentlemates actually do win. They're pretty good at control. They won the control. They then lost the game 4, though. And this was another bad game 4 for Skyz. Today, Lunas, he stepped it up. He played quicker, and he was actually pretty good. It was Skyz that looked kind of lost on the map at times. There were multiple instances where he, well, just didn't make a play when he probably should or could have done. And that will raise questions, because in this series today, Lunas was possibly their best player. I mean, Lunas, Kiz, Lynz, they all played pretty well. Skyz had 65 kills for a 0.71. Not all about KD, but the minimap also didn't lie as far as I was concerned in that aspect. So that, okay, Gentlemates have lost again, right? And this one was still pretty bad. Neptune took over, 114 kills. I think this guy on the Reddit, FPS Splash, whatever you want to say, he came up with a stat, which I am assuming is true, that Hicksy, in his final 2 series he played with Surge, had 114 kills combined over those 2 series. Neptune just dropped that in 1 singular series. So that may be the difference. Gentlemates, their roster also seems chalked, and if anyone's going to go next, they're not going to drop Lunas again. They just picked him up. Skyz is now the man on the chopping block. Is that for a Priestahh again? Is that for an Illy? Is that for a Hook, possibly? And change the roles around. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Long video today, I just realised, but there was lots to yap about. So intrigued to your thoughts and comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.